Hi guys, this is gsn1.com and I'm here with the review of the Realme 10 4G version with this beautiful backside, which actually reminds me of a bit of sand, maybe a seashell. Okay, so it's a 4G handset. It's stuck right between the entry-level handset by definition and also the mid-range phone. It's got a 6nm CPU, it's fair that it's a MediaTek Helio, and at the same time it has a screen which is shockingly bright. It's got this youthful thing going for it and a low price of $200, dual camera and a pretty large battery and a Super AMOLED screen are always something to rave about. Okay, so design first. Obviously, it's plastic all around, plastic at the back and a plastic frame with a decent measurement of 8mm in thickness and a weight of 178 grams. It's pretty easy to wield, and you're also getting a plastic protection for the screen up front, aside from Gorilla Glass 5, which I am a bit shocked to see here on such an affordable handset. Now, aside from that, I have to say that the build is fine and the flat frames definitely help with the grip, but the phone is quite long, so your finger may not be able to reach all parts of the screen. Now, I also have to say that the buttons on the side are clicky, especially the volume buttons, and the power one is reseated and integrates the fingerprint scanner. It's a pretty cute phone with an Ibiza vibe, definitely for the party seekers and the youngsters out there. There are other color hues which you can find for this handset, maybe more sober ones, who knows. Okay, so further we can address the screen. Now the panel you're seeing here, this one is a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED with a Full HD Plus resolution and at the same time with 90Hz refresh rate. 6.4-inch Super AMOLED with a promise of 1000 nits, which is pretty crazy, but also with a rather big chin at the bottom, reminding you that we're still in the entry-level department. Okay, so we have this video here which shows us the prowess of the Super AMOLED panel with some pretty vivid colors, but for me there's too much white here. The blacks are deep, but the white is too white, perhaps aiding with that very high brightness. Wide view angles are of course available, and an excellent contrast even in the strongest of sunlights. I was actually shocked to see the brightness here, so before we cover that, let me tell you that we have a pentile matrix pixel arrangement as revealed by the microscope, while the brightness, check it out, 717 lux units, which is amazing. It even beats gaming phones and flagships like the Xiaomi 12T Pro, and also surpasses the Vivo X80 Lite, the Motorola Moto G52 and the Motorola Edge 30 Neo. Now it scores below a few other phones, but none of them so cheap, I would have to say. It's below the Honor Magic 5 Lite, which is a pretty close segment, and below the Huawei Nova 10 Pro among the similar mid-range affairs. From what I can see, it's also below the recently unveiled Redmi Note 12 Pro, which is a bit higher in price and specs. Now, moving on from the screen, I have to actually show you a bunch of settings for said screen. We got your brightness here, auto brightness, screen color modes are available, vivid, natural, pro and a color temperature slider, as well as font, display size, a video color enhancer if you want your videos to really pop out color wise. Plus the refresh rate can be set to auto select, which is dynamic, high or standard, reaching 90 Hz. Okay, we go further now and address the CPU, which is a processor you may have seen before. It's of the MediaTek variety, and here we're dealing with a MediaTek Helio G99 6nm octa-core, also present on the Motorola Moto G72, Oppo Reno 8T and the Poco M5. We are lucky enough to have here the version with extra RAM. There's 8 gigs of RAM available here, LPDDR4X plus 128 GB of storage. There's also a version with 4 or 6 gigs of RAM and also a version with 64 or 256 GB of storage. Honestly, there's not much lag here, which I'm happy to inform you, and also not much heat, and the shooters run pretty fine. I'm talking about video games, PUBG, Call of Duty and all that. So 6nm CPU is actually doing a decent job. Now when it comes to the actual tests, let me see a bunch of benchmarks. So we don't have much expectation here, and I would say that we're pretty much on par with the expectations. We're above the Moto G60 and the Poco M4 Pro, but also below the Oppo Reno 7 Lite and the Honor Magic 5 Lite. Geekbench 6 was recently unveiled and we don't have many phones to compare the device with, but I see that we beat the Moto G53 and G23, but we're below the Redmi Note 12 Pro. Now at the same time, the 3D Mark suite is still here, and we're beating the likes of the Xiaomi Mi 11 Lite 4G and the Galaxy A52, also the Poco X3 NFC and the Nokia X20, so not many victories over phones from the past year, more like 2 years ago. We're below the Nokia X30 and the Redmi Note 11 Pro. So typical mid-ranger fare, perhaps competing more with mid-rangers from 2 years ago than 1 year ago. I'm happy to inform you that there is no problem with the temperature, it's pretty well kept in check. So when it comes to benchmarks, you only reach 33.9 degrees Celsius, which is no problem, and in games 31.5. Now battery wise, we have a 5000 mAh battery with 33 watt charging, and guess what? There's a charger in the box. Now, as far as the battery tests are concerned, here we are with a hugely impressive result. In the video playback test, we achieved 22 hours and 57 minutes, which is actually huge. Top 10 material, 10th spot from the 500 phones we've tested. It beats the likes of the Honor Magic 5 Lite and the OnePlus Nord CE2 Lite, which are pretty respectable in this manner. It's below the Oppo Reno 7 Lite and the realme 9i 5G. By the way, 3 or 4 out of the top 10 devices come from Realme. This company is pretty good with achievements in the battery department. Now, PC Mark is also fine. Continuous usage sits at 15 hours, beating the likes of the Vivo X80 Lite, Realme 10 Pro, the Coca-Cola we recently tested, and the Honor Magic 5 Lite. We're below the Nokia X30 and the Moto G52 and the Oppo Reno 7 Lite. The charging isn't as impressive. It takes 1 hour and 90 minutes to fill up the belly of this beast, and after 30 minutes you're at 49%, which is actually pretty good. Settings for the battery include the special optimizations of the charging, power saving, and super power saving. When it comes to acoustics, we only have this speaker here and the audio jack, plus a few tweaks with modes like Smart, Movie, Game, and Music. The volume is pretty impressive on its own, but it gets a bit muddy when you're listening to rock music, especially the lows get muddy. The highs are okay, the voices are decent. You'd better keep the sound at 80%. And as you can see, we have a special boost mode, so after 100% comes, as you can see here, 200%, an extra ultra audio, which is actually much higher than expected. To be honest, if you go below 80%, the sound is disappointing. Now, when it comes to the decibels, we have here some tests. So remember this: powerful sound, muddy at top volume, not much bass, good highs, and good voices. This is 87.6 decibels achieved with an acoustic sample in our measurement, above the Oppo Reno 7 Lite and the Vivo X80 Lite, below the Nokia X30 and the Moto G52. In games, things get deafening, 103.6 decibels. It's amazing. Above the Honor Magic 5 Lite and the Oppo Reno 7 Lite. I keep comparing it to those phones, it's relevant. It's below ZTE Axon 20 and the Cat S52. Now, as far as the cameras are concerned, we get a singular selfie one with a 16 megapixel resolution, Full HD and HDR. At the back side, there are two cameras, 50 megapixel main camera with LED flash and AI, and also 2 megapixel bokeh camera. You can take Full HD videos at up to 60 frames per second, and options are, to be honest, quite generous here. You got your movie, you got your dual view, you got your panorama, as well as tilt shift, time-lapse, pro, slow-mo, and even a text scanner. Full resolution shots and portrait, believe it or not, also includes bokeh flare, which you've seen on the Oppo Reno handsets, making a sensation. There's the photo mode with AI scene enhancement. There's the video mode with the thing I mentioned before, Full HD 60. There's a street mode and also night mode with the option of, well, alternating zooms. That's about it. Now let's talk about the gallery. Okay, so before we get going, some things to remember here. The main camera and the selfie camera are the stars of the show. Of course, the zoom isn't much to write home about up until 2 or 3x. I'm actually happy with the color calibration here of the main camera, even when it comes to vegetation, a particularly, well, not so good endeavor that the handsets achieve when they go below $300. Of course, there is the odd error which appears when the sun is in front of you, but that happens pretty rare, so it's best you remember how to properly position yourself. An interesting aspect here, this is a regular shot and the colors are fine and the details are fine. This is a 50 megapixel shot and I either moved it or the details aren't exactly what I was expecting. So you can take full resolution shots, but be advised that you may be a bit underwhelmed at times. Where you will not be underwhelmed is the close-up area. We don't have a macro camera, but we can take very close close-ups with an excellent amount of detail. And what I loved here is the fact that we took a series of shots of graffiti and you can actually tell which one is older and which one is newer. You can see how the time and weather has affected the passage. And now, the main core of the camera, the selfies. They're incredibly good. I was not expecting this from a $200 phone. There's a lot of texture here for my beard, for my skin, and for my eyes, so everything is excellently represented. You can see the bags under the eyes, you can see the glitter in the eyes, and the bokeh was able to cut perfectly around my head, even around the rebellious thread of hair here and there. I'm actually shockingly impressed by this. I was not expecting such a good selfie camera, and I've seen phones that cost twice as much and they don't deliver as well. And even what's behind me is rendered in a pretty decent manner. And look how the shadows fall on my face and how the bright part is lit and how the headphones in my ear are presented here. So this is a quality selfie camera if there's anything to remember here. And we don't have a dedicated bokeh camera for nothing. It actually cuts very well around the subject here, and we can also apply bokeh flare in a pretty nifty manner. You can see the glittering spots behind the statue. Now going further, we have several more colorful shots. Once again, I'm pretty happy with the color calibration. Not much to complain about here, and a lot of texture has been seen here. I'm going to skip ahead to the toys, which have some beautiful reds. If there's a hue I will remember from this gallery, it's definitely red, and a correctly shown one. More close-ups, more toys, more selfies. There is the occasional fumble of the focus because the wind was blowing into the flowers, but in the end, as long as I got the texture of the flower and its stem right, I'm actually impressed by this very close close-up. Okay, so when everything's said and done, this one feels like a selfie phone with an honest main camera. That's during the day. Now let's go to the nighttime shots. We change town, and you should remember here to always use the night mode, because without the night mode, things are, well, blurry, murky, muddy, and the streetlight halos aren't well contoured. But when the night mode is on, things change dramatically. So this is not a good shot, but this is a good shot once the night mode is on. You can definitely tell the difference between the murky one and the properly clear one with better architectural details. So keep the night mode on at all times is my advice. Even though there are some artifacts here and the halos are elongated more than usual, the night mode tends to save the texture and the details of the nighttime shots. An interesting art installation here. This is probably the best example of the night mode. Regular shot, not much to write home about. Night mode shot, actually a pretty good capture. Okay, so this is all I had to say as far as the photos are concerned. Now let's talk about the video, and I'm going to help myself with this player. We don't have many videos here because we only shot in full HD. So yeah, just like we noticed for the selfies, the selfie video are also quite fine, believe it or not. So this is turning out to be a sort of vlog and selfie camera phone, oddly enough. We also have the dual video mode, once again highlighting the selfie camera more than the back camera. There's a bit of shakiness, which appear when you're panning. The shakiness is felt more prominently when you're filming in full HD at 60 frames per second, but that's pretty necessary if you're filming subjects in motion. Also in the areas with bright colors, the sun will fall on them and it will be exacerbated and shown as white, like a kid's face, a kid's clothing. These kids dressed in white, for example, they're all white because the sun is falling on them. So yeah, the reds are correct, just like they were in the photos. And the microphone may seem fine to catch the ambience, but the wind, when it's blowing, is definitely underwhelming. Okay, so here we have a stabilization test, or we're trying to have one. This is the actual, well, not this one. Let's go back. So let's find the stabilization. It's this one here. Obviously, it's underwhelming. You can feel every step I take, left, right, but this was to be expected at this price tag and with this camera setup. The focus test was actually satisfying, switching from focus on the foreground to the background, back and forth, with pretty high success. Now, I would say this is a decent level of capture, something like out of the playbook of a Poco M phone. And now let's see a nighttime video. I mean, it's noisy, it's murky, it's shaky, and it's quite dark, but the color calibration isn't that bad. So all in all, the typical capture you'd expect from a $200 phone, stuck between entry-level and mid-range. Now, when it comes to connectivity, which is what we'll discuss next, we're getting here Wi-Fi dual band, we're getting Bluetooth 5.3, GPS, NFC, and USB-C 2.0. The calls were pretty loud and clear, and when it comes to the speed test, we have the app here, and these are the speeds we achieved. So the speeds here are actually on 4G, up to 125 megapsecond in download, 64 megapsecond in upload, and on Wi-Fi 267 over 353. Those are the results we achieved. Now let's talk about the software. Now on paper you should see the phone running Android 12 with realme UI 3.0, but guess what, it got updated right when it reached us. It has realme UI 4.0 and Android 13. You can add extra RAM here up to 8 GB to RAM expansion. We're using gestures here for the multitasking via recent navigation back and forth, and we have a sidebar here with applications which can be overlapped on top of the split screen when you're doing the multitasking via split screen. Okay, so we have an app drawer which is a bit cluttered because it includes this top section, which bothers me. I would have preferred to see all the apps here, not just those recent ones and recommended ones. This is the drop-down section with notifications and quick settings, nothing out of the ordinary. And sadly, Realme hasn't changed much of the widget department once it offered us Android 13. As usual for Realme and its brethren like Oppo or Vivo, there's a lot of customization for the icons. One would say too much customization for the icons. So this is the options series which we're using here, quite a few options to play with the iconography. Now, aside from that, we're going to the settings and trying to find what's special, but before that happens, we have a fingerprint scanner here for security, and it's quite snappy and precise, actually more precise than I've seen usually on phones of this price tag. So, connectivity options, wallpapers and style, there's even the always on display set of options. There's app animation speed, which may actually help with the battery life or the way the screen animations are shown. So oddly enough, I actually struggle to find always on display because it's pretty well hidden. I have to search it from here and it's a bit annoying. It's here, it's got custom patterns, Bitmoji, text and image, insight, and a few more cute analog clocks. There's also password and security, there's the privacy section and special features including split screen, flexible windows, which are basically the floating ones, which you can see here in this animation. Smart sidebar, kit space, and a simple mode. There's also one hand usage and Realme Lab where you can connect both headphones via Bluetooth and via wire. DC dimming will get rid of the screen flickering, which you're seeing right now, but with some side effects. And also sleep capsule, which is able to restrict the phone usage when you're asleep. So experimental features are available. Now the pre-installed apps, there is this basic one, the phone manager with a bunch of tools which cater to the well-being of the handset, unknown source installation, backup, app cloner, diagnostic, kit space, and of course one-touch optimization. I was actually shocked to see how many features the gamers were getting. So when it comes to the gaming department, you're actually treated to a side menu, believe it or not, which has performance features, recording features, 4D vibrations, and so much more. So gamers actually have a lot to play with. Otherwise, there's TikTok, LinkedIn, there's Booking, Spotify, and Bolt pre-installed. In a nutshell, this has been the Realme 10 4G experience, and it's time for the verdict. I'm going to go ahead and call this a selfie phone with an excellent battery and a very bright screen. It's definitely a young man's phone. So on the pro side, Gorilla Glass 5, bright screen, comfy wielding, a youthful design, pretty good main camera, solid night mode, also a solid selfie mode. The fact that we have a micro SD card slot is a plus. Also a plus is the audio jack, NFC, and the bokeh flare. Plus fast update to Android 13 and Realme UI 4.0. Those are the pros. Now, when it comes to the cons, we're definitely going to be referring to the lack of IP certification, lack of stereo speakers, and also lack of 4K video capture, lack of an ultra-wide camera maybe. The 60 frames per second video capture is a bit underwhelming compared to the 30 frames per second one, oddly enough. And the benchmarks didn't impress me as much as I would have expected from a 6nm CPU. So yeah. And also turning the volume all the way up to 200% is a bit of a bummer, not necessarily a feature. So when everything's said and done, don't forget to visit our website. And at the same time, don't forget to check out this verdict. This feels like a young man's phone. It's youthful, it's got all the selfie things happening for it, so yes, it's truly a selfie phone for sure. A 16 megapixel selfie phone with good quality, excellent battery and excellent screen. Perhaps one of the best $200 phones out there you can get right now if you don't expect fantastic video capture and 5G from it. It's just 4G, but it does its job pretty well as a young man's handset. Okay, so that's pretty much it as far as the Realme 10 4G is concerned. I can recommend it for selfies and battery and screen for sure. Goodbye.